My tower defense game is buggy. Really buggy. Like, what's going on here? And here. This is awful. I've let this get too far. I just kept logging issues I saw because I didn't want to bog down my devlogs with them. But now is the time for me to resolve that. How's it going, everybody? I'm Lewis, also known as Scaffold, and welcome to the 35th devlog for my Iron Age fantasy tower defense game, Project Torrim. In the last devlog, I reworked much of the game's UI for usability and consistency. I received a lot of positive feedback on this, and a few comments pointing out some issues. Tyler Green noted that the profile picker could have a cancel button. Neat Games and Small Gaming commented on the tower radius, which needs to be transparent. And Games by Saul, Torrim Game Dev, and the Shelf Man all asked about the blurry tower images in the pop-outs, which should be clear. I took these issues and put them into my Trello board alongside other issues I've collected over the weeks. I then tried to fix as many as possible. It's come to the end of my development week and I reckon I've fixed well over 25 issues with the game. Luckily, some stemmed from the same root cause, however others were more pesky to deal with. Don't worry, I won't bore you with them all, but I'll take you over some of the more interesting ones. Let's start with the ones I've already mentioned. The first one was to add a cancel button to the profile picker. This was pretty quick and simple to add, but feels so much better for the user when compared to a solitary yes button. Next was the tower transparency. This was something I added right at the start of the project and haven't touched since, which left me really confused as to why the radius was not transparent. I took a look really hard at the radius in both yellow and red modes and realised it actually was a little bit transparent. Unfortunately, the alpha value I was using was just too weak for the game's background compared to the original cornflower blue. As such, all I had to do to fix this was bring the red transparency from 0.5 to 0.25 and the yellow from 0.5 to 0.05. Last of the issues I've already mentioned is the blurry tower images in the pop-outs. This was something I was a little worried about because I've got my own camera class that works out sprite scale as opposed to using the standard monogame transform matrix. However, that didn't add up because if the scale is correct, then the sprite should still be drawn properly. As such, I turned to Stack Overflow where someone had simultaneously asked and answered what I needed to know about image quality of scaled sprites. Essentially, the sampler state I was using was causing the blurriness and I needed to switch from linear to point wrap sampling. This was the perfect solution to my problem, although text got a little jagged in this transition. However, after some time I wasn't bothered by it and didn't feel the need to put the text into a different sprite batch. What do you think of the text? Let me know in the comments below. Next, there was a selection of issues I recently noticed crop up. Things like towers never shooting at new enemies and homing projectiles getting stuck in one place. This gave me quite a headache since up until a few weeks ago they were working just fine, which got me to investigate my recent code commits. Back in Devlog 32, I made sure sounds would update in real time when they were adjusted in the settings menu. I used a dirty hack in which game objects had an always update function, which meant that even if their layer was paused, they could run code. This did not mix well with the collision engine and caused all these bugs. Upon seeing this, I realised I had to remove the always update pattern and use proper events that you'd expect to see in any other UI system. Now, draggable objects call an onMove event, which is used by the slider to call a value change event, and finally my sound channels call an onVolume change, which all the sounds are listening to. I'm quite annoyed at past me for using that hack, but current me is quite happy that I learned the lesson of think twice, code once. And if there's anything I want you to take from this devlog is that lesson. When you get a code solution, don't rush into it. Mull it over and think about the possible consequences of that code, because if you get it wrong, you'll probably end up having to remove it and add the proper code later down the line. So try and get it right first time. Let's finish off with 3 bugs I thought were quite funny. First, the chain tower was completely messed up. Aside from being affected by the aforementioned always update bug, the chain tower seems to spam out a huge amount of projectiles that kill enemies from afar. The main culprit of this was the collider that the projectile used to head towards its next target. Enemies would hit that collider and assume it was the main projectile collider. Unfortunately, objects with multiple colliders doing different things aren't supported in the collision engine, so I scrapped the code in the projectile itself and used an invisible tower to achieve the chain effect. Second, the knockback issue that I noticed in Devlog 31. Multiple towers can apply knockback to enemies, which means if you have enough you can stop or even send away an enemy. I didn't like this, so I originally gave all the towers quite a weak knockback, however this isn't enough. So I added a short knockback immunity to enemies, which means they cannot be stopped, however I can now review the knockback of each tower as they can be significantly stronger. Finally, the third funny issue was with window resizing. When the window was resized, the game started to zoom in and out in odd ways. This was caused by the fact I was multiplying the current camera scale by the window size. This worked out fine in my original test scenario, but not in most normal scenarios. So to fix this, I introduced a relative scale property, which the camera uses to scale itself to the window size. Overall, I'm happy with this week. Whilst a few issues remain, I resolved a huge chunk of bugs, gameplay oddities and engine issues, leaving the game in a more stable position to be finished. Next week I intend to move on to a full base revamp, including the sprites I made in Devlog 32 and some other ideas that I've got, so don't forget to subscribe to get notified when that video comes out. I hope you've enjoyed watching this devlog for Project Torrim. Leave the video a like to let me know you did, and comment to leave me any feedback. Thank you and I'll see you next time.